Hi, my name is Brittany Moore with Eligibility of Northwest Texas, and I am presenting today on how and what you'll be talking about with clients at this driver's license clinic. So just general overview in case you get asked, we help with ID restoration, which kind of goes hand in hand with driver's license restoration. If anybody asks and says that their issue with getting their license is that they don't have identification documents like an ID, birth certificate, and so they need a name change or declaration, replacement documents for immigration, their military DD-214 ID, anything like that. We can also help with legal aid. In those situations, you just kind of want to get their background story, see what it is they're missing and why they're unable to get their driver's license because of that missing identification problem. Is it because they need a name change in order to get their birth certificate? Is it that they can't get their birth certificate at all and they've tried and they were born at home, or whatever the facts may be in that case? That's the information we really want to get from clients at intakes and clinics in order to determine what we can do to help them restore that ID so that they can get a license. And tickets. So yes, we can help with outstanding fines and fees. And that's essentially what tickets are, right? These Class C misdemeanor low-level cases. We at Legal Aid are able to help because it is that gap of representation. Generally speaking, we want our clients to know that we are not pleading, we're not going to enter a plea of not guilty. So meaning that we're not going to fight the tickets in a way that traditional private attorneys do. When we help them here at Legal Aid, what we're essentially helping them do is file a motion for a finding of indigency. And if necessary, if we can't get a dismissal or deferred, then we will enter a plea of no contest on their behalf in order to get that finding. So the reason we enter that is because we want, these are the different dispositions that can happen with these ticket cases, these fines of these cases. So one, payment, right? But that's not an option for most all of our clients. Is paying, it can't happen. They have other bills to pay. They have other priorities that are just frankly more important, the roof over their head, food and clothes for their kids, things like that. And so do we try to get deferred? Yes. If possible, if the prosecutor will give it to us and our client has not plead on that case, yes, we will try to do that. Do we try to get dismissals? Of course, if possible. If the ticket is more than 10 years old, if there's any other reason to get a dismissal, of course. But genuinely speaking, what we are doing is we're entering that motion for finding of indigency, drafting that, entering that on their behalf, and requesting from the court either a waiver of the fines and fees based on their indigency, or community service based on their indigency. Sometimes if a client has served time, if they've if they bring that up in your conversation with them, or you can specifically ask them, have you ever served any time? Because you might be able to get time served. Please get the specific place they serve their time and when they serve their time. You can just jot it down and then let them know that we will need proof of that time that they served. So some kind of piece of paper, if it was Dallas County Jail at Lew Sterrett, that they were jailed May 5th, 2022 and got out June 1st, 2022. Just some document from the jail that they can get, just walk in and get, that says that they were there for this date to that date. And we can use that to get them time served. Again, the time does not necessarily have to have been served for a ticket specifically. It could have been time served for any charge, any conviction, anything. As long as it's within the jurisdiction of where the court is that they owe the fine and fee, and it was after the date for which they got the ticket, we can use that to petition the court for time served, or request from the court time served. Besides that, we do get waivers if someone is disabled. That's another thing that we could bring up, or that a client may bring up and say, hey, I can't do community service because I'm disabled. That's fine. We just need a letter of your disability benefits awards letter from Social Security, or a doctor's letter explaining your disability, and we will submit that with our motion, not in lieu of, but with the motion for finding of indigency. And in that case, the court is more likely to just waive all the fines and fees, rather than order community service. So those are kind of things you want to go over with the client, making sure that they understand that when they're coming to us, that again, it's not a traditional style of representation, because our ultimate goal is for you to not have to pay, because that is the most crippling thing for our clients. They can do community service, they can do all these other things, but they cannot pay and may never be able to in a lot of their cases. Here's an example of two searches that have been done for you before you met with the client. You'll see this page, which is the failure to appear or omni-based system printout. This will show tickets that we have found in this search engine. It's public, it's free, based on their date of birth with DPS and driver's license number. And it will show most of their outstanding tickets and warrants. However, it will not show all of them. So what you want to do is go through with the client and say, okay, it looks like we found some tickets in this example here on this slide, Eastland County Precinct 1 Court, Nolan County, and Snyder Municipal Court. And they can say, yes, I do remember those. And then what you want to make sure you ask is, are there any others that I did not name that you know you have tickets in? So inevitably they'll say, oh yeah, I also have some in City of Arlington or in Mesquite. And then you want to make note of that in your attorney notes section. So that way we can look those up later and add that to the representation for the client. The reason being is because this system, although it does represent generally a lot of the courts in Texas, it does not, all of the courts in Texas do not report to this omni-based system. So there are quite a few courts who do not report, and therefore we want to make sure we ask the clients that question so that way we can have that well-rounded representation and help them with all of their outstanding matters all at once. And then, like I said, you just want to make note of where those courts are, and then we can contact those courts directly to get the citation information. And then the next search that we have done for you that you'll be looking at while you're meeting with the client is the driver's license eligibility page. You'll see here on this first page that it'll say eligible or not eligible. And you can tell the client that. Most of them, it will say not eligible. And then if you look at the rest of the pages of that same printout, it'll tell you why. And you basically just have to read that out verbatim to the client. And that's pretty much it. They're really self-explanatory. It sometimes is a lot of text, but we normally make 2 copies for us to keep, or for you to reference, and then also one to give to the client so that way they can leave knowing what all their barriers are to their license and what all that we're going to try to help them with. And then finally, something else, if it comes up with the client or something that you could share with the client or ask them even, is if community service is ordered, here are some things in this slide that can actually count for community service. So if they're in a GED program, some sort of job or work skills program, counseling program, drug or alcohol rehabilitation program, all of these things, I can normally, or not almost all the time, if they're in one of these programs, judges love to hear that. So if they owe a bunch of money to a court and therefore a lot of community service hours, we can request that the judge count these programs, the time they spend in these programs and these educational things, count those hours as their community service hours. So if a client ever brings that up, or if you can ask the client that, that would also be a great thing to note in your attorney notes. So that way we know, we can tell the judge that when we're requesting community service and say, hey, I am in X program right now, trying to get my nursing certification or whatever the case may be, forklift license, can we count that as community service? And statutorily, we are able to request that, and most judges do grant it. Finally, just another thing to note if it comes up is occupational licenses. If a client requests help with that, yes, that is something we can help with. You can make note of that in your attorney notes in addition to the tickets, or if that's all they needed help with, of course. Just to know that there are 2 different types, essential need and interlock, which is based on the people who have DWIs. This is something that we'll look into on the back end, but just let clients know that, they just have to show a need. So even if they don't have a job, which is the most common way to get an essential need occupational license. They can still get one if they're a single parent of 3 kids, right? We just have to prove that they have kids, because those kids need to go to school, they need to go to the doctors, they need to, you need to go to the store for them. Those different types of things can prove essential need. And so just let them know that they will need to get SR22 insurance and go ahead and get started on that while they're waiting for follow-up on help for that occupational license. Another thing about DWIs is if a client says they've had more than three or more, it is not likely they'll be able to get an occupational license. Or if they're on probation and have not been gotten through halfway of it, the midway point, that is also something they're not likely to get granted, and therefore we are likely not to petition for. But just something to note if you come across that situation and somebody is asking about occupationals. Generally speaking, if they do have outstanding tickets and that's why they're wanting the occupational, let the client know that we want to address the tickets first because that is the underlying problem. If we can fix that, then they can just get a regular license and they won't need an occupational to begin with. And that's the better outcome, because an occupational only lasts for a year. And so it's pointless to help with the occupational if after a year they're right back where they started because they never took care of the ticket. So just let them know that if they need an occupational, we can definitely help, but we want to address the tickets first, which is the actual issue, before we go that route. And that's it. I'll be floating around the clinic. Some of our staff will be floating around. If you have questions, concerns, feel free to reach out to us. Here's my contact information if you want to reach out beforehand. I hope this helps and that you will feel more prepared for this driver's license clinic. Thank you so much for your time and for volunteering to help out with this clinic. It makes a huge difference for the thousands of people who need this help.